Hey guys, welcome back. I know it's been a hot minute. I took a much needed break from social media, but I am back and hopefully we'll be posting videos every weekend like normal. Today's video is a collaboration which is hosted by Cory from Desert DIY, and this is the first Ugly Duckling challenge of the new year. I chose to do this antique washstand. It was a curbside find. It is in very rough condition, so let's go ahead and get started. Starting with a 60 grit with my orbital sander, I decided to see if I could just sand off this paint instead of using stripper like I normally do. I was actually doing this over the holiday season at my parents' house, so I was fortunate enough to be able to use my dad's shop, which is heated, which was really nice. I did work my way up from 60 all the way up to 240 grit with my sander. Somebody had obviously already upcycled this and made some modifications to it, so next step was to go ahead and basically just take it all apart.
Step finally home. I've been gone for too long. It is true. If only I could do one thing, I'll be with you. It is true. Baby, how I need.
To fill in the deep gouges from where the frame was that I hammered off and the holes from the hinges, I mixed up some Bondo. It's a two-part mixture. You mix the putty with the hardener, and then I applied it with the craft stick into those gouges. I did let it dry and I did sand it smooth. I had to repeat this process twice, which was not surprising because those gouges were pretty deep in the sides of those frame.
You go, just need some time. At your own pace, you need to find your way. I know now you'll never change your mind for something that matters to me.
I also unscrewed the top from the body just to make it easier to work on. So I needed to sand the edges of the top and they were rounded and curved. So to avoid flattening those out, I took a sanding sponge and set that on top of where you put the sandpaper and then just connected the sandpaper around it to hold it in place. If you are fancy and have a surf prep sander, you wouldn't need this. You could just go ahead and do that. I wish I had one, but I don't. So if you are balling on a budget like me, this is a good option to get the squishy to go around and not flatten out curved areas.
Spend together, and suddenly the chances are small, just like the lottery.
Once I had the top off, I was also able to go in and sand the underneath side. Since those lips, those edges are going to be visible, I wanted to make sure that all of that was smooth. And it also gives you a really clean line from where you're staining something to painting something if you can take the top off. Both drawers were in pretty rough condition, so I'm only going to be using one of them. I will be turning that second drawer area into a shelf instead. I'm going to reuse that hardware, so I went ahead and took that off and set it aside, and then as you can see, the drawer bottom is broken, so I went ahead and removed that so that I could cut a new piece to replace that later.
For something that matters to me. But what do you want? What's your biggest need?
I then sanded the drawer inside and out, all the sides, with my palm sander to remove all of that black paint.
Chances are small, just like the lottery. I just hope we could stay together. We wait and see. But the chances are
Once I was done with all my sanding, I used some Dawn dish soap and a microfiber cloth and gave the entire piece a really good clean. I then masked off any areas with some frog tape and paper that I don't want to get paint on. I applied one coat of Zinsser Bin shellac based primer using a chip brush to the entire piece.
it goes round and round in circles, but I'm still on the ground. It's a dizzying day. I would give a lot to get away. It's getting real dark in here. Feels like I've been here.
After my primer was dry, using a sanding sponge, I just lightly sanded back any texture that was left behind from the primer.
Or just sit beside me and never.
Off camera, I cut a new piece of wood for the drawer bottom right there, and then I also cut two pieces of wood. One's gonna go where the drawer was for the top shelf, and then the other one's gonna go for the bottom. And then I had some leftover trim that I cut down that I will be putting on the front of both of those shelves to give it a finished look. So I wanted to try something new with this piece, so I am going to be applying some textured paintable wallpaper onto the side panels just with some wallpaper paste. So I got my measurements, I cut down all the sizes that I needed, and then I was ready to start applying them. I got this wallpaper paste, it's the Roman paste from Home Depot. I think you can get it on Amazon as well. And then I will be applying that with a foam brush. So first I started to make sure that my paper was the right size, and then I applied a generous amount of wallpaper glue. My wallpaper does come pre-pasted, but I just wanted to be sure that it was gonna stick to this. So once I applied that on, I went ahead and stuck my wallpaper on, and then using a paper towel, I just rubbed off any excess glue that was like oozing out, and I just kept rubbing it to make sure that it was flat with no bubbles. And then I continued that same process with all the panels on both sides.
Feels like I've been here 1,000 years. Could you bring some light to me? Or just sit beside me and never leave?
After my wallpaper was fully dry, I used some paintable caulking and went in around all of the edges of the wallpaper and all of the seams. Anywhere that there was a seam where the wood meets, especially on the older pieces, the paint is prone to crack. So I just went in and applied all that caulking to prevent any of that from happening.
There was something about you that day. I can still hear the shimmering sound.
Today's video is sponsored by Cottage Paint. They sent me a couple products to try out. I have used Cottage Paint once before. Back in November, I did a yellow MCM little dresser. If you haven't seen that video, I'll link it below. But in that video, I did say that I wanted to try spraying their paint, so that is what I will be doing today. The color that they sent me is Blue Heron. It's a really pretty navy blue, and I will be applying this with my HomeRite sprayer. You do want to make sure that you always filter your paint and everything before you start, just to make sure there's no clumps in it. I did do a total of 2 coats on this, and if you are spraying and you ever miss a spot like I just did right there, don't go back over it. You'll end up with runs with too much paint. Just get it on the next coat.
Let's sit down, it's getting cold. All that glitter is not gold, and you are something I don't wanna miss. The way you looked at me before makes me want you even more. If you want to, I'm up for a kiss. I know it's tough. Don't let anybody tell you you're not enough. There are days when we all feel like we're messed up, but we know that we're all diamonds in the rough. In spite of all, we are all we got.
This is also from their Serenity line, which is their all-in-one line, so I will not have to top coat this, which is really nice. And last time I used their all-in-one paint, it held up really well. It felt super durable, so I don't think you need a top coat at all for additional protection. For the top, I am using Cottage paint. It's called Color and Seal in Walnut. It is an all-in-one stain, so it has your stain and top coat in it, and I'm just applying it with a stain pad. I did do a total of 2 coats. I know right here while it's wet, it does look a little bit streaky, but it does dry out really even, and then the second coat really evened it all out. I also did this to the drawer front and those little trim pieces that I am putting in front of the shelves. To add some details to the textured wallpaper, I am using silver and gold from their Reflection line. It's metallic paint, and I'm going to dry brush this onto the raised texture areas of the wallpaper. So using a small little sponge, I just got a little bit on there and then dabbed off any excess that was left on, and then just very lightly went over the raised areas of the wallpaper. I did this first with silver, and then I went in with gold and did the same thing in kind of different areas to get a little mixture of metallics going.
I'm waiting at the doorstep, I'm finally home.
All right, before we get into the final reveal, let's take a look back to remember what we started with.
Standing here a while just to take it all in. Radio's playing our song.
And here is the final look. As always, let me know what you guys think below in the comments, and be sure to check out all the other YouTubers that are taking part of this collab. I will have a playlist linked in the description below.
Leave you again. You are all I want and more. It's true.
Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys next weekend with another flip.
Only